Humankind commands near-complete authority over planet Earth. More than 7 billion people inhabit our crowded planet, but in 1950 that number was just 2.5 billion. It then nearly doubled to 4.4 billion in 1980 and then further grew to 6.9 billion in 2010. At this rate, by 2050, the human population will reach 9.7 billion. With that in mind, let's visualize the human footprint by processing data collected all over the world in a 3D layer. I'm your host Shirvan and welcome to Caspian Report. Humans are present in nearly every corner of the biosphere, but the population distribution is uneven. Here we have a map of the estimated population density, which is the number of people per square kilometer. Some places are more populated than others. The Sahara is virtually uninhabited, and the desert is steadily expanding southward due to a changing climate, which places additional stress on the communities living south of the desert. Now, historically, humans settled in areas where the climate was moderate, resources plentiful, and overall conditions supported agriculture. Rivers, croplands, deltas, valleys make some of the criteria. The more of these criteria are available, the better the conditions to support a larger population. Places with the right condition are highlighted as bright clusters. Have a look at the Benelux in Europe, or the Nile in Egypt, or even the Ganges River in the Indian subcontinent. Now compare that with a sparsely populated country like Australia, where most people cluster in more habitable urban environments. Urbanization is a major trend in our planetary history. Just take a look at the urban growth of Sao Paulo in Brazil. The red area shows the extent of the city in 1905. The city grew significantly in 1929, and by 1949 its population exceeded 2 million. By 1964, the city doubled in extent. Meanwhile, this is how Sao Paulo looks in 2018. It's almost as if some invisible hand smashed an orange on the floor. Today, the metropolitan population of the city holds 21 million people, and it's expected to eclipse 23 million by 2030. Cities often generate massive water and air pollution, but by concentrating people in dense communities, urban areas also relieve stress on natural landscapes. So let's ante up the stakes. The circle you're seeing now holds more than half of the people on Earth. It may be difficult to imagine, but there are more people in this circle than outside of it. The vast concentration of human communities has obliterated many natural habitats, which has pushed some species of animals close to extinction in the wild. The circle you're seeing contains 22 of the world's 37 megacities, each holding at least 10 million people. So when measuring the global balance of power, this circle is a fundamental to the equation. Over the course of the 20th century, urban populations have surged. Today, more than half of all people live in cities. This map takes the population density and projects the world's biggest urban clusters. The smallest dot presents 300,000 people, while the largest bubbles hold millions. The Tokyo metropolitan bubble, for instance, holds an estimated 37 million people. It almost looks like a nighttime satellite map. Let's look at the world from a nighttime perspective, which also gives an idea of human activity as well as development. Let's add some visual magic to make it more lifelike. Some cities are now visible from space. There is Moscow, and you can clearly see Paris, Madrid, and others. That small dot by the Caspian Sea, well, that's Baku, my hometown. In the Western Hemisphere, you'll notice a string of cities extending from Washington to Boston in a near-continuous river of light. To the Midwest, a trail of towns highlights an era of American history. When railways were built in the 19th century, it encouraged settlers to move west. The result is an evenly spread patchwork of towns and cities. Meanwhile, on the other side of the globe, we have North Korea. The country is so barren that you can practically draw its borders. The lack of electrical infrastructure is the result of bad policymaking. The nighttime map tells us many such stories of human development. Some of these stories are organic, others carry the mark of human failure. Here's a nighttime photo taken by NASA. It has even more details in it. Do you see the faintly glowing lights of the coasts of Vietnam, China, and South Korea? Well, those are fishing vessels. Have a look at the intersection of China, Korea, and Japan. The square-like formation of vessels is due to the maritime borders. So you can now see borders in the sea with the naked eye. But this view of Earth is relatively new. For most of history, the night was illuminated only by the light of the moon and the stars. Now the reverse is true. As the globe sparkles with the light from thousands of cities, light pollution has dimmed the glow of the cosmos. The next map pictures the world's paved roads, but we're going to do a little trick. By removing the geographic layout, we're able to analyze the data more clearly. Paved roads have made some of the most remote places on Earth accessible by vehicle. Have a look at the United Kingdom, which is among the world's densely connected nations road-wise. It almost looks like an organic spiderweb. Still, there are few places that remain poorly connected due to difficult terrain. The most dramatic example is the Sahara. The desert is so inhospitable that constructing reliable highways has proved impossible up until this point. For this reason, in geopolitics, Africa is often divided between North and Sub-Saharan. The Amazon is another example. Only a few highways connect the interior of the rainforest with the wider world. This may not last into the future. Brazil is rapidly expanding its road networks into the Amazon in an effort to tap into the economic opportunities found in the rainforest. Let's do another trick. There, we just removed national boundaries. What's interesting here is that the continents still remain visible even though the Earth is bereft of geography and national borders. Taken together, from end to end, the global road network is about 36 million kilometers. That's about nearly a quarter of the way to the sun. Now let's place back the national borders and have a look at the global airline routes. What you're seeing here are over 67,000 commercial flight paths crisscrossing the globe. Travel by air is now so common that in 2019, some 4.5 billion people boarded a commercial airliner. The number of airline passengers within the European Union alone sits at roughly 700 million, with London's Heathrow Airport serving the largest number of passengers. The fastest growing area, however, is East Asia. As China grows economically, its citizens will be increasingly able and willing to travel by air, which is why Beijing wants to set up its own global commercial airliner to compete with Boeing and Airbus. By 2050, the number of jets and likely passengers is predicted to double, so there's a lot of economic opportunities regarding aviation. Some nations are trying to transform themselves into airline hubs. Take the wealthy cities by the Persian Gulf as an example. About a third of the global population resides within a 4-hour flight from Doha, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai. Meanwhile, 2/3 of the global population lives within an 8-hour flight from the Gulf airports. So it makes sense for these nations to want to dominate the aviation sectors. Iran is sure missing out on this action. Now let's give the Earth its landmass back and look at commercial shipping activity. The green lines you're seeing are condensed tracks of thousands of cargo vessels that were collected over a period of 12 months. Maritime traffic is the easiest and most cost-effective way to move goods and raw materials around the world, About 90% of the world's trade is carried by sea, so this map is also a reflection of the state of global trade. Have a look at Europe and the way ships sail along the coast of Portugal and the English Channel. The shorelines of Holland and Belgium are completely lit up, which makes sense since Rotterdam is Europe's busiest port, followed by Antwerp. Zooming out, you'll notice that some of these traffic lanes are disproportionately affected, especially along choke points. Securing such corridors plays a big role in geopolitics. When the Suez Canal opened in 1869, it connected the Mediterranean with the Red Sea and cut thousands of kilometers of sea-going trade routes. Securing the Suez was deemed a strategic necessity, which then fueled the European colonization of the Middle East. Although brown colonization is now out of fashion, global powers are still competing for control over choke points. Take the Strait of Malacca, where much of China's exports and imports pass through. If China cannot secure the strait or find an alternative waterway, its economy will remain at the mercy of foreign powers. The shipping map also shows the economic weight of the United States. No other place has such a dense flow of maritime traffic coming in from both sides of the continent. This right here is why America is a superpower. It taps into the Pacific Stream as well as the Atlantic. Beyond trade, the sea is also a place of communication. Hundreds of meters beneath the global shipping lanes is a growing network of undersea fiber optic cables. The total number of cables is constantly changing as new cables enter service and older cables are decommissioned. But as of early 2020, there are more than 400 cables in service around the world. These submarine cables may not be as cool as satellites, but they form the backbone of the internet, transmitting 99% of all data. This is how we're able to enjoy the internet, share data, and so on. Traditionally, private telecom carriers owned these cables, but that model is now slowly changing. Content providers such as Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and Amazon are now the major investors in these cables. The collective length of these submarine cables is about 1.2 million kilometers. That is enough cable to stretch from the Earth to the Moon 3 times over. Among the longest cables is the Asia-American Gateway Cable, which is about 20,000 kilometers long, with the state of Hawaii at its nexus. Finally, let's visualize the overall footprint of all human activities around the world. The map you're seeing now combines 8 different measures of human pressure on the environment. These include urban setting, population density, electric infrastructure, croplands, pasture lands, roads, railways, and navigable waterways. The spatial data makes for a beautiful presentation of the human footprint. We can clearly see areas of modern civilization as well as areas that are left untouched. Have a look at the dramatic contrast in human impacts in Asia, from the teeming plains of northern India to the sparsely populated deserts of the Tibetan Plateau in China. Just look at the activity by the Australian coastline versus the dry and remote outback. You can clearly see how geography affects human activity. In North America, you can practically draw borders around the urban centers of Los Angeles and San Diego, which are in stark contrast with the less modified desert to the north and east. In South America, look at how the coastal areas are teeming with activity, especially the plains in Argentina and Brazil. You can also clearly see that the Amazon is not immune to human ventures as more and more inroads are made into the rainforest. The map you're seeing now will look completely different in the future, when another 2.7 billion people join the human community. Our cities will expand to meet our housing needs, more roads will be constructed to move even more people and goods around the world, the Arctic will become a new highway for shipping lanes, and those few dark spots on the map will become smaller still. we'll need more resources to cater to the needs of growing communities, but at one point, the needs of humankind will outpace the Earth's ability to support our species. That threshold is coming ever nearer. Some might even argue that we've already passed it. I've been your host Shirvan from Caspian Report. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, comment and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and Saul.